So since we already know the equation, then what reaction order of each reaction constant, then we can calculate the K value, the reaction constant at a different temperature. The second experiment involved in this measurement is to change the temperature. Then we can calculate a different reaction constant and use the Arrhenius equation to calculate the activation energy barrier, EA here. So that'll be just the same as your question 4. So you calculate that the K value at a different temperature, and then you make a plot using log K versus 1/T. And then this part, the slope part, you need to find out the EA value. And then you can use the Excel to generate the uncertainty of EA. So it will be just exactly the same as your homework 1, question 4. So this is a 3-day experiment. When you are dealing with saturated bromine water, you need to be extremely careful. So remember in homework 2, the last question is ask you to find out the material safety information of a bromine. It's extremely caustic and should never leave the hood. So the container should always be in the hood. And once you are in lab handling bromine, make sure you always have goggles on, and you need to wear a lab coat, and make sure always handle bromine with gloves. The bromine can react with a protein on your skin. So if you have the bromine on your skin, that will burn your skin. Whenever you perform any kind of dilution, the saturated bromine water has to be in the hood. Once the solution is diluted, that solution can be brought out of the hood. We also use this concentrated HCl. It's also very caustic, and the initial dilution, so the concentrated HCl is about 18 molar. The initial dilution of that concentrated HCl should be performed in the hood. Okay. Right, and wear PPEs at all times in the lab. Okay, and so on Canvas, there is instructions from Science Physical Chemistry book. And I also provided 2 useful reference articles. You can use those 2 articles as your example of writing up your experiment report. Make sure to read those articles. I think the way how they organize data is really good. They don't put a lot of data into the body of a full report. That they only use partial data, but that partial data make the point. And these PowerPoint slides is also on Canvas. There is a procedure of how to prepare the reactant solutions. Make sure you read that, because that contains information about the concentration of the reactant. Okay, there is also an experiment video, shows how this experiment is done in the lab. The 1 to 100, that's a diluted bromine water, absorption is at the 393 nanometer. Okay. So you will need to calculate the bromine water concentration and determine the concentration of each reactant in each run. The bromine water concentration, that diluted bromine water concentration, is measured by the UV-Vis. And the concentration of other reactants are measured by different dilution process. Use linear plot to calculate the order of the reaction with respect to each reactant, and then calculate the rate constant and its uncertainty, and then determine the activation energy and then write up a journal article style full report. And this is a group report, so submit the one report per group. And there's some writing tip I put here. Use the ASU paper. So one of the literature is published by Arizona State University researchers. Use that paper as a reference. That paper only had 3 pages. So very limited pages, but it contains a lot of information, very concise, very good writing. You can use that as a reference. So you probably one linear plot to show the reaction rate and one log plot to show how you get the order of a reaction, and use one plot to calculate the activation energy. So you will need 3 plots that will be all for your full report. Okay, so another slide here is to have you compare that with the integration method that we do. This is not the method we use for this experiment. The last page is to show you if you only have 2 rounds of data. So for example, you think that there are 2 rounds that messed up. Maybe there's a contaminant. The data doesn't make sense. You only have 2 rounds of data left. And you can use this method to calculate the reaction order. However, when you use a less amount of data, the error, the uncertainty becomes larger than before.